we are going to uncover how much each Formula 1 driver is going to earn in this upcoming 2023 season. You might be surprised at the disparity in between wages even at the top teams like Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari. Formula 1 being the pinnacle of motorsport, it attracts about 1.2 million viewers per race weekend on average. Now this is a lot of viewers, but compared to sports like football, where the Premier League can easily beat this number for most matches every weekend, there must be a reason why Formula 1 drivers are paid so well and are among some of the highest earning athletes in the world. Now before we get into how much each Formula 1 driver will earn, we'll quickly go through the different ways that each driver can make money in Formula 1. So starting with their salary. Now this is the main source of income for almost all Formula 1 drivers. Drivers at new teams and rookies on the grid typically have much lower salaries than drivers that have a lot more experience. For example, last year in the 2022 season, George Russell was on just 4.1 million compared to Lewis Hamilton, who was on 33.1 million for the season. The second way drivers can earn an income in Formula 1 is through prize money. Now this is different to the salary because the prize money is based on how they perform. So for example, they might get a bonus for race wins, podiums and even points scored. Quite a few years ago, Lotus offered Kimi Raikkonen $60,000 for every point that he scored for Lotus. Now across 2 seasons, Kimi ended up racking up 390 points, costing Lotus over $23 million, making them almost bankrupt. Would you rather a £20 million base salary with no bonuses, or would you take a £10 million base salary with a £2 million bonus for every race win and a £500,000 bonus for every podium scored? Across the season, it'd probably average out to about the same. The third thing on the list is endorsements, and this just means that a company will pay you to have their rights to use your face and your image and brand on their products. One of the examples we've seen for this last season was Sergio Perez with the weird Cash App advert. Seems quite out of place, but as Checo has a lot of fans across the globe, it's always good to have this familiar face representing your business. Fourth on the list is sponsorships, and now this is an absolutely massive one in Formula 1. Sponsors will pay a huge amount of money to put their logo on your car, helmet, overalls. As in Formula 1, there is just so many eyes and cameras on everything. If you ever see Lewis Hamilton rocking the Tommy Hilfiger base overalls, then this is because Tommy Hilfiger is a main sponsor of Lewis Hamilton. Number 5, and drivers can make money from having a separate business. So a good example for this is Lando Norris. Although he's young, he's got multiple separate businesses such as LN Karting, where he offers his own racing karts, and he also has his own esports team called Quadrant, where he sells merch and enters competitions and things like that. Now other examples, Bottas has his own gin company called Oath Gin. Hamilton has many different businesses such as Neat Burger, which is a vegan burger chain. Finally on the list is personal investments. Now as these drivers earn a ridiculous amount of money, they'll all have financial advisors telling them where to put their money, where to invest it. It's why 90% of the grid live in Monaco. They're not just putting all this money they're getting from the teams straight into their savings account. So let's get into what you've clicked on this video for. We're starting at the very bottom, and these 2 drivers bring home just $1 million per season. And the first driver on the list probably isn't a shock, is Logan Sargeant. Now Logan Sargeant obviously is a rookie this season, was in F2 last year, and managed to get into the Williams team after securing enough super license points. Now Williams came out publicly last season and said they no longer need paid drivers, so they swiftly got rid of Latifi and brought in the F2 rookie, which I think clearly shows how much Latifi was valued, which is not a lot. The only other driver on the grid bringing home just $1 million is Yuki Tsunoda. Now he's going into his 3rd season at AlphaTauri, with Nick De Vries coming in and Franz Tost labelling Nick as the leader of the group. I think Yuki's got a lot to prove. AlphaTauri clearly value Nick more than they value Yuki, so there's 5 drivers that will bring home $2 million this season. And the first is Lance Stroll. This is like your dad having an extremely successful business and you join and he puts your minimum wage. Yes, Lance isn't the best driver on the grid, but on $2 million, I feel like it's a little bit harsh. Considering his dad does own the company, I thought he'd be on a lot more than that. Obviously, Lance was a paid driver, so he would have been getting that through a lot of sponsorship deals. But Lance is also going into his 7th season in F1. He's definitely not a rookie or even close to it anymore. and with a lot of people thinking that he's even lucky to have a seat in Formula 1 still, I'm pretty sure he'll be happy to be on this £2 million salary. Nico Hülkenberg, in his first season back since driving for Renault in 2019, also earns $2 million, and I'm surprised Haas are paying him this much, to be honest. Maybe the new MoneyGram sponsorship, they can up their salaries a bit, but they won't pay Mick anywhere close to this, or maybe they just value his experience and can pay him a little bit more. Nick De Vries, as we previously mentioned, will be bringing home $2 million, and Franz Tost has said that Nick is going to be the team leader, and that is clearly where this increased salary has come from. Zhou Guanyu also brings home $2 million, after having an extremely solid first rookie season in F1. I thought Zhou would be towards the bottom of this list. I didn't think Alfa Romeo would have that much money to spend on salaries, but when you see where Bottas sits on this list, it really did surprise me, to be honest. I was not expecting him to be this high up. Now the final driver bringing home $2 million salary is Oscar Piastri. Now I think it's fair to say Oscar is the most in-demand rookie in the world right now, and he's starting on just $2 million, but that did include the $18 million buyout for Ricciardo's contract that they had to pay, so you could consider him as about a $20 million signing. I'm sure Oscar's not too worried about this. I'm pretty sure he'll just be happy to be in a McLaren next year rather than a Williams. The only driver to bring home $3 million this season is Alex Albon. Now he's doubled his salary from last year, so Williams were clearly impressed with his performances, and Latifi was on less than $1 million last season. Moving up to $5 million now, and there's quite a few drivers that hit this, starting with Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso's moved from Alpine to Aston Martin, sees him decrease his salary from $20 million all the way down to $5 million. So he's decreased his salary by 3/4, which is absolutely massive. Alonso is probably just happy to be at a stage in his career where he can go to a new team. He's probably not too worried about his salary. All Alonso cares about is race wins. I think he would go to a team like Red Bull for free if they could guarantee he was the first driver and he had a race winning car. But I think it's positive both for Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin, as he clearly thinks this is a promising project, as he could have quite easily stayed at Alpine on that higher salary, as they weren't going to replace him with Piastri. They were trying to ship Piastri off to Williams. So talking of Alpine, Pierre Gasly next also earns $5 million. Now this is less than his teammate at Alpine, Esteban Ocon, but this is sort of typically expected when you join a new team. You will be on less money than someone that's been there for 4, 5, 6 years. I think Gasly will just be happy to be out of the Red Bull family and to re-establish his career in Formula 1. Now quite a surprising one next, and another driver who brings home $5 million is Kevin Magnussen. Now where Haas have got $5 million to pay Kevin Magnussen completely blows my mind. Maybe it's a new MoneyGram sponsor, but as they weren't even getting close to hitting the budget, they were spending quite a lot of money on wages. They clearly value Kevin Magnussen's experience, and when you compare this to drivers like Mick Schumacher, who were on less than $1 million last season, shows that teams really do value experience and they will pay a premium to have someone in their car who can maximise the points. Moving up in salary now, it is $6 million, and the only driver to bring home this amount is Esteban Ocon, earning slightly more than his new teammate Pierre Gasly, but I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary. $8 million is how much George Russell will bring home this season. Now $8 million is a massive step up from Williams, and he was only on $5 million last season at Mercedes, so he clearly impressed. I'm not sure if he got some bonuses from the race win and all the podiums he scored, but they're keen to up his salary, and I think it is thoroughly deserved. Moving up to $10 million, and there are 2 drivers on the grid that bring home this amount. Now the first is Valtteri Bottas. Now I was so surprised that he earns this much money, to be honest. I thought he would take quite a big pay cut to have that Alfa Romeo seat. I was surprised to find out that they're actually paying him quite a lot of money. Now Bottas obviously has 200 race starts, he has 10 wins and 67 podiums. Now this can be invaluable to a team who are sort of stuck at the back of the midfield. They're looking to develop a car. When you've got someone that's been in a Mercedes team that have won constant Constructors' Championship for over half a decade, then teams like Alfa Romeo will pay a premium to have this information when developing their car. The other driver earning $10 million is Sergio Perez. Now for a Red Bull driver, I thought this was actually fairly low. I didn't expect a Red Bull and an Alfa Romeo driver to be on the same salary, but that's still a big wage, and I think he probably will have a lot of bonuses written into that contract. Moving into the top 5, and number 5 bringing him $12 million per season is Carlos Sainz. Now Carlos Sainz earns nowhere near as much as his teammate Charles Leclerc earns. and he's also the lowest paid second driver on the grid if you sort of class him as a second driver. Fourth on the list is Lando Norris, who brings home a staggering $20 million per season. Now McLaren are obviously an extremely wealthy organisation, and I think they had to pay this fee just to sort of get rid of the interest from the likes of Red Bulls and Ferraris, as he has signed a multi-year contract, so that buyout clause will be absolutely massive. The buyout clause for Ricciardo was over 18 million, and he only had a year left on his contract. I think Lando's earned every single penny of this 20 million carrying his team for the past 2 years. Top 3 now, and number 3 is Charles Leclerc, bringing home 24 million. Now Charles is on double what Carlos Sainz is. Now it's clear that Charles is the Ferrari star boy, he's the number 1 driver, and his wage clearly reflects that. I think Ferrari definitely see him as future world championship potential. I think they'll be happy to pay this wage. Driver number 2 is Lewis Hamilton. Now Lewis Hamilton has been top of the F1 driver salary list for absolute years, but it's been rumoured in 2021 that he did take a pay cut during the COVID pandemic due to some of the financial impacts with Mercedes. Now I'm not sure if he was forced to do this, or it's like a mutual agreement, or it might have even been Hamilton's idea. And Toto has expressed his interest of keeping Hamilton around after he retires from Formula 1. With the rumours that he was going to buy Man U and all his other business adventures, I'm sure he's got enough money for the future. Now topping this list at a staggering $55 million is Max Verstappen. Now I don't think you can argue that Verstappen's not worth this. I think any team would pay this money to have Max Verstappen if they could afford to. Red Bull need to do everything they can to keep Max happy at Red Bull, and I think number 1 is providing him with a championship winning car, and number 2, bringing home a comfortable $55 million salary each season probably isn't doing too much harm either. So now you know how much each Formula 1 driver gets paid, you're probably wondering why they do get paid so much compared to other athletes and other forms of motorsport. Now the first reason, and probably the most obvious, is that they are just extremely talented athletes. The level of skill that is required to be a Formula 1 driver is immense, and something that just very few people in the world have. Most Formula 1 drivers have probably been karting as soon as they could walk and get into a kart, and putting your child through a single-seater race series is extremely expensive, and it's just something not many families can do, so it is an exclusive group. The second reason drivers are paid so much money is due to its large global audience. Now Formula 1 is absolutely massive, it's definitely not the biggest sport in the world, but it is definitely growing in popularity, and I bet if you went up to any person on the street and asked them if they knew who Lewis Hamilton, Ferrari, Mercedes are, they probably would know. The third reason is due to how exclusive Formula 1 is. Compared to a sport like football, where even in the Premier League where there's 20 teams, each team can have 30-40 players. That means there are thousands of players in a league. Now in Formula 1 there are 20 drivers, and that is it, which probably means these drivers do have a little bit more budget set aside for them, as there aren't hundreds of drivers that this salary is split between. So a good example I can give for this is Logan Sargeant and Felipe Drugovich. So last season in Formula 2, obviously Felipe Drugovich won the championship, and he beat Logan Sargeant by over 100 points. So I think it'd be fair to say that Felipe Drugovich is the better driver out of the two. Although Logan Sargeant, through his connections for Williams, did manage to get a seat in F1, which Felipe Drugovich didn't. Now this will instantly make Logan Sargeant more profitable, and he'll be on a much higher salary than Felipe Drugovich will be able to in any other racing series, just because of the exclusivity of Formula 1. The fourth reason is how demanding on the body and how dangerous this sport is. Drivers risk their lives every single time they get into that car, and they do it for the entertainment for us fans, as there is such a high risk, which makes the entertainment so good. And the fifth and final reason is just the high technical nature of Formula 1 and how big the companies are that operate within the sport. So think of a sport like boxing. Yes, there will be a few pay-per-view boxing fights each year where both boxers will bring home ridiculous monies, more than Formula 1 drivers, but for the majority of boxers they will earn nowhere near as much as this. And it's just to do with the whole infrastructure around boxing. Boxing, they'll be training in a small gym somewhere, whereas in Formula 1 they have their headquarters, and they often have worldwide companies with different factories, and the scale is just enormous compared to most other sports. Organisations and businesses like McLaren, Mercedes, they sell road cars as well as Formula One cars, so they have a lot of money and they use Formula One as sort of a promoter for the rest of their business. So they're probably quite happy to chuck large monies into the salaries of the drivers, as it is kind of a marketing purpose. So do you think Formula One drivers are overpaid, underpaid? Let me know down in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.